The Sacramento Kings have fired their head coach, Mike Brown, in what was one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen an NBA team make. And I just watched the Philadelphia 76ers pay a 34-year-old Paul George over $200 million in guaranteed money a few months ago, so the bar is very high. And yet the mediocre franchise that the Kings are have somehow found a way to top that by going out and getting rid of the man who was able to change the culture in Sacramento. He got them into the playoffs for the first time since 2006 in his first year, and yet only 2 years later, Mike Brown is out the door. And may I remind you, this firing took place as the Sacramento Kings were 13-18, so the season was nowhere near done. Hell, they hadn't even reached the halfway point yet, and the Kings felt like a move needed to be made, when in fact I think the complete opposite was in order. Sure, maybe you bring in a guy or two to kind of mix up the lineup, but firing a coach in a situation like this was completely unnecessary. All they needed was a week worth of games to get themselves back into the play-in mix. And here comes Kings ownership deciding to overreact on the situation and fire the guy that they gave a 3-year extension to just this summer. In fact, there were several sources within the Kings organization that came out and said that they did everything in their power to keep Mike Brown, whether that was inquiring about superstars around the league like a Zach LaVine, Brandon Ingram, Cam Johnson, or just making smaller moves to the lineup that would change things up. Hell, nobody wanted to fire Mike Brown. He's a good coach, people here really care about him, until the very last moment they were trying to make things work. Those are direct quotes from people within the Kings organization. But at the end of the day, it feels as though this move came directly from ownership. And another person who's getting a lot of the blame for Mike Brown's firing is Kings star De'Aaron Fox. Because just a few days before Mike Brown was fired, he was in the media talking very negatively about De'Aaron Fox, really criticizing him post-game after a really bad loss. However, this seems to be De'Aaron Fox and Mike Brown's relationship, and it has been since Mike Brown was the coach there. De'Aaron Fox even came out and said that he likes it rough. He enjoys when a coach is tough on him. Hell, he even said that this is the reason that he played for Kentucky, because he knew that John Calipari was going to be tough on him. Now, do I believe any of the bullshit that De'Aaron Fox is spewing? No, not for a second. However, do I think that the media narrative surrounding the Kings is false? Yes, but not to the degree that De'Aaron Fox is trying to make it out to be. You see, what I think is actually going on in Sacramento is that De'Aaron Fox wants out. He's been with the organization for about 8 years and has seen almost zero success, whether that be individually or as a team. Like I mentioned earlier, they've only made one playoff appearance in De'Aaron Fox's tenure there, and he's only ever won Clutch Player of the Year. He's had one All-Star appearance and a whole lot of nothing else, and that was 2 years ago at this point. So is De'Aaron Fox sick and tired of being on the Kings? Absolutely. In fact, he hasn't signed a contract extension, even though his contract is set to expire next season. So what it's looking like is that De'Aaron Fox is trying to force his way out of Sacramento, and I don't blame him. Hell, his brand has barely grown in the time that he's been with the Kings. You don't see anybody rocking De'Aaron Fox 1s on the court. Hell, you don't even see anybody talking about those shoes other than when they were released for about a week. So De'Aaron Fox leaving Sacramento is bound to happen. Hell, he's still only 27 years old and has got a long career ahead of him, as long as there's no major injuries. And another thing about De'Aaron Fox is that he's a bit of an Iron Man. I mean, he's never had a major season-ending injury that's kept him out and led into the next year. Hell, the least amount of games that this man played was 51, and that was during the bubble season. So should we even count that? Not really. De'Aaron Fox has gone out and averaged over 20 points for the last 6 years of his career. He's also been one hell of a playmaker for Sacramento, averaging above 5 rebounds a night since his rookie season. Hell, even his boards have improved because he's had to rebound a lot more, considering that the one thing that this Kings roster lacks is size. So of course De'Aaron Fox is going to have to step up as a star and rebound a bit more, which is why he's averaging over 5 rebounds this season. The only thing thing that's taken a step back for De'Aaron Fox has been his efficiency. He's been shooting a lot worse from three-point range, but he doesn't really need to do that because there are a few guys on the roster who can fill out that role, and his field goal percentage is up from last season, so that is a positive. Hell, he's even going out and getting 1.6 steals, and if you know anything about De'Aaron Fox, it's that he's fast and he steals the ball, and he's got a goofy looking haircut that makes his head look really round. But other than that, those are pretty signature things for De'Aaron Fox. And we'll talk more about this Kings roster in a second, but for right now, I wanted to remind you guys to slow down, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. It would really help if you subscribe. It goes a long way. Alright, now let's get back to talking about the Kings. Now, while De'Aaron Fox is the star of this team, he isn't the only star that this team has. They also have one of the best centers in the league in Sabonis, who's really elevated his play since joining the Kings in a trade deadline move that shocked the NBA. Of course, we all know, essentially, Sabonis got traded for Tyrese Halliburton, and every other year, it looks like the other team may have won. This season, it looks like the Kings won the trade. Who knows? What I'm going to say is it was a great trade for both teams. But anyway, Sabonis has been in MVP convos, at least when it comes to voting, for the last 2 years on the Kings, and he's also having a great season this year. He's averaging 20 points a night for the first time since 2021, which was like 4 years ago at this point. Yes, you're getting a bit old, but anyway, besides averaging 20 points, he's also averaging a career high nearly in rebounds at 13.6 and is having 6.1 assists a night while shooting 59% from the field and 42% from the three-point line. He's one of my favorite players in the league right now, and that's saying a lot considering the fact that I'm a Lakers fan. Hell, if you call yourself a Kings fan and don't like Sabonis, are you even a real Kings fan? What is there not to like about this guy? He's made the team better ever since he got there, and he's a way better fit than Tyrese Halliburton would have ever been. However, De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis just weren't enough to get the job done because they did miss the playoffs last season, even though they finished 10 games above 500. The West was absolutely stacked. So what does the front office decide to do? They decide to go out and trade for an aging superstar. A superstar whose style of play was more relevant about 20 years ago and doesn't really fit into modern day basketball. But anyway, they decide to go out and trade for DeMar DeRozan, who's having a bit of an average season. A season in which you could expect from DeMar DeRozan, considering the fact that he is in his mid-30s at this point. DeMar DeRozan went out and has averaged 20 points a night for the Kings. Isn't too bad. He's shooting about 49% from the field. Couldn't ask for more from the guy, but his defense isn't really there. What were you expecting? You traded for DeMar DeRozan, and he's getting you about 4 rebounds and 4 assists. So there you have it. DeMar DeRozan is even doing his job on the team. So if you've got all your superstars in DeMar DeRozan, De'Aaron Fox, and Sabonis playing well, and hell, even some of your role players have been doing fantastic, like Malik Monk, and Kevin Huerter's been alright, even Keegan Murray's been nice, what's going on with this team? Well, it seems as though they got off to really big leads and then lose them and are absolutely trash in clutch time, which is very interesting considering the fact that they've got a runner-up in Clutch Player of the Year in DeMar DeRozan and a winner of Clutch Player of the Year in De'Aaron Fox. But it seems as though when they're on the court together, there's absolutely no clutch moments happening because the Kings seem to be losing every single close game that they're in. And if a few close games had swung their way, who knows? Maybe we would have seen Mike Brown be the coach of this team for a month or two before their ownership decided that he needed to get out the door anyway. I mean, they got Doug Christie as their head coach now, and I don't see that being any better. I don't think that Doug Christie is going to get an extension as the coach because that would be absolutely moronic, especially because if De'Aaron Fox is going to be asking for a trade, this team is going to be heading into a rebuild. And I think that's the best course of action here after you've decided to fire Mike Brown for no reason. Hell, you got just about every coach in the NBA coming out and defending Mike Brown. I know for a fact that a guy like Mike Malone couldn't wait to talk shit about Kings ownership because he was once a coach there himself. However, the same owner decided to fire Mike Malone a little bit too early. I really felt as though maybe Mike Malone could have changed things like the way he did in Denver. And then you got a guy like Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr is very close friends with Mike Brown. Mike Brown was an assistant coach on the Warriors before getting this job with Sacramento, so he knew Mike Brown very well and didn't feel as though his buddy deserved to be fired, especially after what Mike Brown had been able to do for the Kings in his first 2 full seasons there. Is this a completely irrational decision by Kings ownership? Yes, I will stand on that. However, do I think that De'Aaron Fox played a major role in what's happening here? Absolutely. The ownership is clearly trying to keep De'Aaron Fox happy by any means possible. They don't want to lose him because they know if they lose him, they're going to have to head into a rebuild, and the Kings suck ass at rebuilding their team. There's a reason they've only had 1 playoff appearance since 2006. It's because the Kings don't know how to run an NBA team. I'm going to be honest, if you're a Kings fan, the only thing you can do at this point is either switch to a new favorite NBA team or hope and pray that somehow, some way, ownership decides to sell the team. And that just isn't going to happen. But anyway, I think I've covered everything I've wanted to, especially surrounding Mike Brown's firing. So I'm going to end the video here. Like I said, if you're new, subscribe to the channel. But I'll catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.